I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks everybody for coming. So we have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Josh, second by Gene. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment? Okay. Thank you, public. Consent items. We have a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Second by Ron. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion items. Control analysis presentation.
Have you seen Brian yet?
See coming?
I assume so. I have been in other meetings.
Well, let's just roll by that one.
Maybe he's a little,
Yep, that could be whether enrollment projections.
the sheet is there, that's with, that's based on current numbers. If we went by the NPRO that we have, that we get through schoolfinance.com, we're in that kind of dicey where the first grade is actually at NPRO has it at, because we've got 28 in kindergarten right now, NPRO has us having 29.3. Second grade, they have us at 30.2. Third grade is another 29.3. Fourth grade is another 29.3. Fifth grade is a 33, and sixth grade is actually a 37. 38. And so fifth grade, sixth grade aren't a problem. Kindergarten's not a problem. Those are clearly two section. If you look at the guidelines that the board has approved before, 30 is a two section for kindergarten through grade 6. 29 ends up being for kindergarten through fourth grade, 29 to 25 ends up being a 1.5. If you've got 29 point something students in NPRO, which means we're right on that cusp between 29 and 30, do we go with the 1.5 teacher? Do we go with two sections? Because 30 is where you split it. The reason this comes into play is one of the things we're talking about is the staffing. And by March 31st, we need to let tenured staff know if they're going to be placed on unrequested leave. All the staff at the elementary school is tenured. So if we're going to take a class that's in two sections and crunch it down to 1.5, we will need to let somebody go. We already know that there's one section that's going to be leaving because the sixth grade is going to 2 and right now it's 3. So we already know that there's a reduction of one staff. However, with numbers like this, and then if we're going to split one at 1.5, which one is it going to be? The two classes that seem with the numbers that we have right now that we would lump together and do like we've done classes before where it's been like a 5-6 split or a 4-5 split, would be 3-4, but those are not educationally, that would not be a sound decision to put 3-4 together, because third grade is considered the last year that students are really learning to read, and fourth grade is the first year where students are reading to learn. There is a big shift in the education between third and fourth grade. So educationally, it does not make sense to put those together as a 3-4 split. So I'm not asking for any decisions tonight. I'm asking for some thoughtful consideration. We need to really look at what we're thinking as far as sectioning next year. And I'm just putting it out there that we've got some kind of, there's nothing clean about those numbers. If it were 25, yes, that is definitely a 1.5, where they're in 2 sections in the morning, 1 section in the afternoon. If they're all at 30, yes, we've got board action, that's 2 sections. We've got basically 4 classes in a row that are gonna come in right at about that 29 mark. And so we need to, you need to, as a board, decide what you wanna do with staffing there. High school, those are the current numbers. Once again, NPRO has the numbers a little higher than that. And our current numbers for MNVA, we staff according to how we get, and the staffing there is worked, but looking at those numbers, this would be 62.5 about full-time teachers maxed out. And looking at historically the numbers of our special education population, if we have these same numbers next year, we're looking at about the need for 20 special education teachers. And so that it evens out to about 82.5, and that would be teachers filled to the max of their assignment.
So with the elementary, Mr. Bartz, could you write us up a proposal? Because I know we're gonna have one teacher that's in theory moving to the high school, right? With that 6th grade class. I mean, it might not be the same person, but I understand when we have 55 kids moving up that it affects the numbers. But I'm just curious, if we take that out of the equation, if you went from this year's staffing to next year's staffing, what it would look like and what the cost would be. If it's gonna be less or more, or, you know, what it would look like. Understanding that the big class, we understand, is moving up. So, because I'm not an I mean, I could put thought into it, but it's not gonna be good thought, because I don't know anything about 3rd and 4th graders and what levels they're at, and if they should be combined or any of that. I mean, I have to go by what you guys say.
And Rick and Todd and I all talk about that on-site staffing, and it's just it's the thoughtfulness is on how stringent are you going to be to hold the line on previous board action on guidelines. Is it going to be a hard and fast? The board acted on this in the past. It said you can't split. You can't have 2 sections unless there are 30 kids in the class. Are you going to hold fast to that? And that's what we need to work on as far as the staffing, or is it going to be that's a recommendation, but if you come to us with rationale for why it needs to be 2 sections at 29, you'll approve that.
I think that's probably what we're thinking. I mean, that's what I would be thinking is if you guys bring a proposal to us and it says we need to have 2 because of this, then that's, you know, we rely on you guys to give us some guidance. Like Mimi said, other than Mike Galeen, well, Gene had some teaching experience, you know, but, you know, and Pete, but other than that, you know, we're not in that class, we're not there, you know, we don't know. That would be my thoughts.
We want what's
Josh,
best for kids, but
yeah.
at the same time, if you come back and say, we know that one teacher, because of the big class moving up, so that's kind of a given, but we need to add $20,000 or $40,000 to the budget. I mean, if you say the budget's gonna stay the same,
then it's not.
I think we'd be like, okay, yeah, then let's do it. But if you're adding, you know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to the expense of teaching, then I'm sure we'd have some questions. But
because there will be fewer kids generating funds for the
Right.
building, so we
Right.
need to
That's what I mean.
do
You
need to
need to-
reduce to keep at that same spending ratio. We will need to reduce costs.
But if you look at overall, I just happen to know that the graduating class, I think, has 31 kids just because my daughter is in it. So we're getting 4 more kids because the kindergarten's got 35. So overall,
if they all show up, yeah.
overall, it looks like it's staying the same. So again, if you take that salary for the one teacher and say, okay, now the high school has more kids than the elementary, so we're gonna move that up to the high school. In theory, it stays the same. I'm talking simplistically here, but
You have to look at the cost involved, but you have to also look at why do people want their children to go to Houston School? And if you're putting that out there also, as the class sizes become bigger and bigger, there'll be a little less interest on those people when they're gonna have their children here. The more attention their children get, the more they like that. But you're absolutely right, the board members have mentioned cost, you gotta look at that too, so. Yeah, both of those, I believe.
And that's why we have the limitation we have right now, so we keep the classes small to maintain the people that wanna come here. So again, you gotta just give us your proposal, let us know the cost. I mean, that's what we really need to make a decision on.
Okay.
And do those classes have paras in them too? How many of them have paras?
If there is a para in a class, it is because the student need is there because of an IEP. And so we also have to look at that with placement and with the student needs as well.
so I know I mentioned a couple times, and Todd, maybe you can answer this. I said that a teacher is kind of theoretically going to the junior high with that class of 55, but how does that work? There's no extra, the class size will just be bigger.
Class size will be a little bit bigger. Yeah.
Do you have any other, are you prepared for that class? Have you been working on it? I mean, I'm just saying.
For about 6 or 7 years I've been preparing for it. No.
They bring some challenges.
They do, and I think some of that is more of the special ed needs, and that's a piece that we're looking at. But as far as, they're just going to be bigger classes, but I think we're going to be okay. I was looking at a few things, but some things won't work that I was hoping to do. Just doing a 7-8 combo. It may work in some classes, like a science class, we could do that curricular wise, but we can't. And I thought maybe we could do it in social studies, but we actually can't, because the state standards say 7th graders have to do this, 8th graders have to do this. We can't say, oh, we would just as soon have the 8th grade standards in 7th grade. The state actually does define it. They don't define it in 9-12. You can teach your classes in whatever order you want to, but you can't do that in 7th and 8th grade. And of course we can't do that with the English and the math. That's, a little more difficult. But I think we're gonna be okay. They're just gonna be a little bit bigger.
Michael, you have
I'll remind you said that.
I know.
But and also with the elementary teachers, I have the elementary licensure, so they can't.
Yeah, I mean, I knew in theory, but it sounds like if that's the case, it's 1 year where we can be a little flexible because just the way that it worked out.
So the history of the board resolution or action for class size limits, how long has that been in place, and was that visited during because of budget concerns? Is that why it was there budget, or was it educational basis, or both when the board established?
I think both. At the time we made the adjustment, because I believe it was lower. Correct me if I'm wrong with this, Rick. I think it was like at 28 or something, and we bumped it up to 30 or something. There was some change we made.
There was no real guideline. It was just.
They just moved it.
Well, I feel like many years ago, deja vu all over again, that I was on the board when we said the kindergarten and maybe 1st grade, the section would not be more than 15 or 17 or something
It was
like that.
19. I think it was 1999.
So that was a long time ago. But it was limited because it was deemed educationally important to do that. And then as soon as we got past whatever that was, then the section sizes could be a little bit bigger. So now we bumped up those early ones a little bit, or not?
We still have the guidelines, and K1 and 1 have the lowest staffing ratio, where they are never supposed to go over 19. 2 and 3 are never supposed to go over 25 in a class, and 4, 5, and 6, and I can, the sheet is taped to my wall. I will scan it and send it out to all of you.
Well, but based on that, I mean, we've set those, so, I mean, the principals know and the teachers know their cohorts. So if there's a need to have a smaller class size in some section, and have 2 sections smaller, but there's another cohort that's really firing in all cylinders, then why wouldn't we approve something like that for an identified need? I don't know. That would be administrative recommendation rather than rigid guidelines.
Well, if it comes down to budgetary reasons, then that adjustment could be made where we can shore it up, and when the drop back could happen.
I mean, I'm just trying to. We're a small school. We can, like Pete said, we want to have our families and our kids. We want to do what's best for kids, and if their class is firing on all cylinders, pretty good. Everybody's gonna equity. Keep the classes equitable. Whatever it takes to do that. Some classes need a little bit more intervention, some a little bit less, but they're equitable.
Okay. We'll
work
on getting the data and the recommendation.
Okay,
Okay.
good. So I'm assuming this is Brian.
Yes, this is Brian.
Okay. Did anybody else have any enrollment questions other than that? We'll go back to Brian. Control now. Sure.
Thank you.
All right.
Do you have a network connection or a calendar connection that I can plug in to show a presentation, or I can present just?
Well, I broadcast the board packet up there.
Do you have a deck or something?
I have a deck, but I don't have a jump drive with me. I can just present as well.
I'm not Can sure you what email it to her?
I could.
Because that might work really well.
Yep, I can do that.
I'll have one more enrollment question. On the NCLEX stuff, how, in the past and a few years, how much have those numbers been off? Are they like always on target, or are they more likely to be a little over, more likely to be a little under? I mean, is there any wiggle room there with the NCLEX number?
Actually, they've been fairly accurate, which is why when I looked at, I put the actual current numbers, these are the kids we have in hand. But looking at the NPRO numbers, there have been a few years, it's been off more with grade 6 than with the others, because I think we get 6th graders open enrolling in at that age. So it's been farther off with 6th grade, but it's been fairly accurate, and that's why when I looked at the NPRO numbers, I thought before seeing the NPRO numbers, okay, with 28 or 29, we can maybe do a split 2-3 class and have 3 teachers for the two grades. And we've done that before, and it's worked well. But then I looked at the NPRO numbers, and I just thought, no, because the 2nd grade would bump up to 30 with the NPRO numbers, and then they would be in 2 sections, and we can't put the 3rd and 4th graders together. That just educationally doesn't make any sense. And so that's looking at, as I said, looking at current numbers, I knew what decision I would make, and then looking at the NPRO suggestions, and NPRO has been fairly accurate.
This isn't the first time it's come up, is it? Does this happen where you make an exception or an adjustment per year?
Typically when we do it, we use that 30 cutoff, and there have been some years where 30 haven't shown up or somebody moves, and so, but we have to make that decision in March.
Gotcha.
And so if we made the decision in March to go with 2 sections, and then in September,
You have 28.
we have 28 instead of 30, we still have the 2 teachers.
Yep.
But this is,
We're just on the edge.
this is, yeah,
Now, for licensure, there's K6, there's middle school licensure too, and high school. Are any of those K6, the all K6, or they're some middle school?
some are middle school,
So they would be able to
Well,
move
we're
up.
talking about transferring the 10 megabyte
but it's,
presentation.
at the high school, it's by curricular area. And so we would need to, if you wanted to have an extra teacher for that 7th grade, it's not one person. There are 7 or 6 different hours, so it'd be 6 different licensure areas. So it'd be 6 different people. And, of the elementary teachers, I'm not sure what if they've got middle school certification, what their middle school certification happens to be.
So if I was just paying the real penny pinch and Grinch, and we said, no, we're gonna, not do 2 sections. In MNBA, we frequently increase a teacher's contract in response to increased enrollments. Is there an opportunity to sort of say, wow, we're gonna go with 1.5 sections, and then come August, maybe we're gonna go 2 sections. I mean, we do it in MNBA all the time.
Yeah.
It's based on enrollment, it's based on the
Flexibility on that.
I mean, I don't think we should do that as a rule. I'm just saying that's just it's a weird option that is out.
You got it figured out over there?
Yeah, we're sending the file to her, but it's about 10 megabytes. Some pictures in it. So it is taking
Let's hope the numbers work out and we can actually
Absolutely.
have a smaller.
Yeah.
And in the past, we've worked it out. Mr. Bartz.
Gotta say, if we can afford,
You've
if
kinda
we
figured it out.
can support smaller section sizes,
That's where we wanna go.
there's no, yeah.
There's no reason to change.
Yeah.
But I didn't wanna assume that and bring in a recommendation that was not following previously approved guidelines.
Well, if
I
we
think
did
that-
that and then we had to cut music and sports, there's an issue, right?
Yeah,
Then
we had to do that.
then it's, then you've gotta decide what's the priority.
I have to drive here.
Yeah.
Now with the graduation of that 6th grade class, then the elementary school classroom layout will be back towards more traditional.
So that.
That's nice.
Where
They're
you
struggling
are,
to
wait, you're
find room
here.
for that extra grade,
Mhm.
extra class.
No, it's still low wage. But we might be okay.
How should we vote now on his presentation? He's going to sign that, I think.
Yeah.
Go within a minute.
Okay.
Well, we could maybe go on to old business.
Facility planning and optimization,
Or
does
these-
that look like it?
huh?
That's
Like he's
it.
got it.
Oh, you got it already? Alright, when I say something, okay.
That would be
Voice means a lot.
Yeah, I got it.
slides for me.
Slideshow, right?
Yeah,
Leave from start?
perfect.
And then you wink at me or something
I'll
when
wink.
it's time to.
Perfect. We would cancel.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening, and I apologize for the delay. So I understand there was a question about the analytics, or this discussion with maintaining the facilities. So I have some slides to describe what it is we're referring to, and a time frame of roughly 20 minutes, so 10 minutes to discuss or present, and then I'm hoping to go 6 to 8 minutes, kind of keep it going. I'm sure you want to keep things going as well. So just a quick overview. So we developed the project and implemented a significant project a couple of years ago. And in the last year, we started implementing more data analytics on projects. What does that mean? That means the control systems in buildings, we connect them to our cloud server and we monitor them. We monitor the fans, we monitor temperatures, dampers, speed drives, all of that information all the time. So we're in run rules and analytics to diagnose when there's issues. And we've found a lot of success with customers in correcting issues promptly. What we've also found is the number of systems we find these issues, that we need to follow them through their resolution. So finding a maintenance management system to accompany this is a great solution. From the perspective of your facilities, having a master plan And having an infrastructure now that you can maintain some records as to what you own, what are the maintenance practices that are the equipment's regularly maintained, all of that in one system is very helpful. So that's what I'm here to share with you, is that tool. So, next slide. So really the objective is to save energy today and lower the life cycle costs. The two go hand in hand. You can save energy right now, want to make sure the system's running efficiently, but also ensure that the equipment lasts as long as possible. Next slide. This is the chart you may have recalled that we developed many times, where we do master planning, we vision, planning and funding, design implementation. And right now I'd say we're in this phase. We're monitoring results today. We have a remote connection into your building automation system, and we provide feedback on its performance. It works. It can work better if we have analytics to help empower us, to give us that data of what's happening on the weekends. That we use the analytics to really help us find the issues. Next slide. What are the data analytics? Data analytics is it's a process of collecting data, applying some rules to find issues. The dampers aren't working because we should see these other things happening. And then we provide feedback and again continue this process. So it's applying rules. It's using the power of the computer to take all this information and write rules to tell us when it happens. So now we can rule by exception. We don't have to always go looking. The systems will help us to find those issues. And sometimes when we find issues, as we're analyzing it, we find another nuance of your system that we have to write a new rule for to find. So it's constantly evolving as well. Next slide. So what is the process to implement? This is a build cell that you want to hit like 4 or 5 advancements. We have a cloud server, and that connects. We have to integrate that into your control system. So we need to coordinate with your IT staff or an IT person. We then maintain the performance, and lastly, we have annual reviews. So we're constantly, either every other week, at the very least monthly, provide feedback on your system with the analytics. And then annually, we want to review the energy savings from the project and how that ties in as well. So kind of 2 different aspects of the ongoing. This is again with the data analytics. Next slide. So what are some examples? What are some of these things that are examples of these analytics that I keep referring to? One, here's a good example of monitoring the operation. Next slide. So here's an example of some data for a given month. Monitoring all of the systems. The best way to save energy is to shut them off. And maintaining schedules is one of the challenges that we have to maintain energy savings. The blue lines up at the top represents 8 to 5 operation. And this was for a sample school, and that was the target, the objective. Now you can see every single day, and you can also notice there's a Monday through Friday, off for the weekends, Monday through Friday. This was February, so this happened to be President's Day. But you can see they are scheduling it off on and off, but you see those bands are all wider. And you also see there's operation on Saturday when we didn't expect any. So this is called data visualization. It's a great way just to snapshot the information and see it and visualize it. And we also find 2 systems that are running 24 hours a day. They're not shutting off at all. So when I look at this, there's a lot of opportunity for savings. When we actually use the analytics, I don't need to look at the data itself. It'll give me a report to actually represent, these are the systems that you need to focus on, these 2. I don't need to see a visualization and come to a conclusion. The conclusion is already drawn for me. Next slide. Same snapshot, but now a little bit, now just 1 week to kind of give you the level of detail, and we can get into the day and down to the hour, but you can now see better line. You can see more detail with respect to the lines. Again, this is 1 week snapshot. So now see 1 week. You can see the lines, and you can see there's some cycling as well. So we also look for short cycling, like these kind of systems, when you have the fans coming on and off, on and off, on and off. That will reduce the life of the equipment. Yes, thank you. So another example where we use the rules. Busy slide, but I'll just describe what we look for. Again, mentioned the temperatures. So when we look at a hot water coil, there's a valve that opens and closes to control that temperature. And sometimes that valve gets stuck open. So we think it's closed, but it's still stuck open and hot water's flowing. So that's called valve leak by. So we look for situations where that fan is running the temperature, there's a temperature increase, but it says the valve is closed. And that's what happened here down in this blue-red bar represents a time, this was a day, where those conditions were met. That was the analytics. It found those conditions when the fan is running, there was a temperature increase of more than 2 degrees over the coil, and the valve is supposed to be closed. If the valve is closed, there should be no temperature increase. So this isn't where we can leverage the analytics to find us these scenarios. Next slide. So that's the process of implementing. The next step is to, part of this process is to integrate it with a maintenance management system. So we find little issues. We'll communicate them with the maintenance staff, but it's really ideal to find out, to make sure that they're completed, they're resolved. So that's where we come into a maintenance management platform. Next slide. This is a company, it's called AkitaBox. They're actually started 3 years ago over in Madison, Wisconsin, and they're now in 46 states, so it's still fairly new. But I've worked for 20 years in the industry and have implemented maintenance management systems. I'll show you some examples of why I really like this company. There's a number of them up in the Twin Cities, a number of school districts that leverage them as well. What they look at doing, they have asset mapping. So they'll actually import graphics of your floor plans to be part of your process. And you'll see this person, that's part of their values. They also audit your facility. So at the end of implementation, you would have a fully implemented maintenance management system. Where most systems are partially implemented, you give them a spreadsheet of data and they create it for you. They go out and grab all of the information. I'll show you some examples of what they would grab. But the key thing for a maintenance management system, one more minute, would be all of these things. So work order software, what that means for your staff is that you would have a system in place where you can track the activities for all of your assets. For your boilers, your air handling units, you can track all those expensive maintenance tasks that need to be done on those things. What it also means is that for your staff, when you're in a room like this and there's a light that goes out, you'll have a service portal that the staff, the teachers, anybody can submit a service request. And now you have a tracking tool to make sure that those are resolved. And when those service requests are completed, because it's through the automation or through the software, the person that requested that service ticket gets an email. Hey, this was resolved, it was fixed. So it's a part of a communication process as well. Preventive maintenance, making sure that those filters are changed all the time or bearings are greased, those would be part of this process in the setup. All of these features, it is a web-based tool, unlimited number of users. It is a software as a service. The benefit is that this would qualify under LTF funding, both the implementation and the ongoing. So this is actually perfectly qualified for what they're trying to achieve. So that's really how this discussion came about. As we are implementing this for other customers in this exact same situation where we're maintaining savings, to leverage this as a tool for the energy savings and master planning as well, because all of this asset information, which leads me to the last point with the LTFM, which is we have collected, UNESCO has collected a lot of this data. We already have all this assets. So with our partnership with AkitaBox, we can bring this at a very low cost as well. So that's what we're excited to have. You're a great customer of ours, and we want to make sure that you're taken care of. So some examples, next slide. Just a quick snapshot of what does it look like when you come in. There's a page like this for each school, where you have one for the whole district. You'll have like a dashboard where you have some number of work orders. Go to the next. No, before we go back one more slide. Sorry, I jumped the gun. One more back. Over on the side, it's a little hard to read, but there's service requests, work orders, maintenance schedules, and the floor. So that's your menu to view as a staff. There's different rights for the staff to go in and see their issues. It's very mobile friendly. There would be QR codes on all of the major assets placed. So did the maintenance staff have smartphones by chance?
No,
No,
they don't yet.
That could be a discussion as well, to get tablets or something like that. The benefit is they can scan them with a QR code. It'll bring up the asset information right there. That pump is making noise. Let me see when I last looked at it, pull it up, and you can see what the maintenance history was. Go to the next slide. I mentioned the graphical interface. So imagine your floor plan, and what I have over here on the left side are filters, and I turned on fire safety, mechanical, and security, and it brings up these dots. So all of that equipment that you have to maintain, like your life safety systems, your fire security system, or fire systems, and your security are these yellow dots. All of these fire systems, they represent exit signs, your fire extinguishers, all of those different assets. So from life safety, security, the mechanical assets, your lighting systems, we can put all of those as pins. So now when you have to do an audit of all your sprinklers or your fire extinguishers, do an inspection, you can just turn on that layer with just those and walk around with the tablet and just make sure you hit each one and inspect every single one. So from a process perspective, they have them on a map. To visualize them is very helpful. Next slide. So what kind of information is collected? I had a snapshot and to fit all on one screen, but you have the basic information, manufacturer, model, serial number. But what's really powerful is they also have photos. So linked in here are the photos of the equipment. And usually there'll be 3 or 4 or more photos, including the nameplate information, all of those things you'd want to see. You have O&M manuals. So you need to maintain it. You have questions, there will be links, upload the PDF files, those will be here as well. If they're web-based links, that'll be also available. There's a warranty section. This one doesn't have one associated, but there'll also be installation dates. And we have information on the stuff that we put in, that would also be included. So the benefit is of installation date for 2 reasons. If it's still under warranty, you have a service issue with this, you pull up the asset, I gotta maintain it, oh, it's still under warranty, and it'll have the warranty information for how to get that resolved. So all of that would be populated as well. And the other reason that installation date is helpful is because of the master planning process. When we know how old the equipment is, you can then plan for asset-based assessment as well as an age-based assessment. So powerful system to pull all of this together with the analytics. Next slide. That ties the whole process together, both with the analytics and with the maintenance management. So that's what I have to share with you. Any questions you have?
Yeah, a question you mentioned earlier on that leak issue.
Yes.
So if you were to have something like that come up, is there does it alarm us saying, hey, there's a problem, there was a fluctuation in it? The bearing thing, is it gonna tell us that there's a bearing problem? Or is it, my maintenance guys can be wandering around and hears a noise and go, oh, there's a problem?
Right.
How does it work? Is it gonna tell me that the thing's been leaking?
Yes.
Or?
Well, so here's the big question and the big challenge for even control systems today is you put those parameters into a control system, you get alarms. And the challenge today is you go onto an automation system, they'll literally have 5,000 alarms that they've acknowledged. So, yeah, okay, I get that all the time. So a temperature goes out of tolerance, it sends an alarm. So you set up those alarms. Think of alarms more like you're in the hospital because you just had a heart attack and they know exactly what they're looking for. This is more like, well, I'm trying to diagnose problems. So it's not going to be an alarm per se. And the reason I say it's not an alarm, and we can make it alarm, I should start out there. The difference is that this looks for trends over time. So that example of the hot water leak pipe, if that only happened for that one day and only for 2 hours for that one day, but it never happened again, that might not be an alarm. That could have been just that day, it got stuck, and something was in the maybe there was some fluid in the hot water, there was a little pebble or something that got stuck in the valve, but it cleared out and it's no longer an issue. So that's where the component of time with the analytics is really valuable.
So it looks for more trends.
It's more,
if
it is
constant going on, then it may.
Exactly, and then use those trends to prioritize. What are my big issues right now? So that's why I mentioned every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks to get a report of your top issues. So if each month you address those top 3 issues, okay, those don't come back, maybe 3 new ones come up. But each time you do that, you're hacking away at all these big issues. Now you're going to get into issues that are maybe not significant. And now you've kind of got a finely tuned system.
So next question, and when you're doing replacements, say they're going around and they're replacing filters, is that's when you scan it and then document that you did a replacement, so it knows it's been updated.
Correct.
And
So
then
the-
you set an alarm like on an Outlook, or, you know, something says, hey, I need to do that every 60 days. Boom.
Correct, and that would be a different platform, so you know, the analytics is a different platform than the CMS. We do have an integration to make sure that we connect the two,
Mhm.
so when you have a work order for something that's in analytics, that you have an easy path to view them together. In your example, yes, that would be coded, so there would be preventive maintenance work schedules, created a list on all of your systems. We would identify for those, what do you do today, or what do you want to do moving forward? And there's not a databases of standards to implement if you don't.
Mhm.
But standards sometimes are over the top, so it's really fine tuning what's the best for the district. So that'll be part of the implementation of the software. What I'm most excited about CMMS, or at least this firm, is that they implement it and get functioning within 90 days. And in my experience of having worked with systems in the past, they failed because they weren't accepted. So if the staff doesn't put in that work order that they did that work, then it's garbage in, garbage out. There's no value to the tool over time. So if you can make it valuable right from the get-go, and you have a good portal for staff to put in service requests, we can do a demonstration if there's interest down the road. Again, this was more of a discussion of, is this even something you want to do?
So is there a track record on payback, generally with efficiency or a resolve type issue, you're gonna pay this back within 2 years, 3 years, justify the...
Right. I would say with the analytics, it's a little easier to quantify a payback, and typically analytics are under 5 years. Now, we've also already done a lot of that with the project of commissioning the systems. So I view this as more of a maintaining tool, but there's gonna be, with this process, as I mentioned, you're gonna keep finding more things to improve. So we're gonna measure and quantify the things we implemented, but as we're monitoring systems, maybe we didn't do anything on that variable frequency drive that was already existing. And we can see it's not slowing down. That would be an opportunity to save more energy. So that would be sharpening the saw. We're gonna just keep making this a more finely tuned system.
Yep.
On a maintenance management, I think it's a little harder to quantify a payback because that's long term. That's more to life cycle cost of equipment. That if you properly maintain a boiler over 10 years, you might get 15 years out of it, or 20 instead of just 10. Well, you get more than that out of a boiler, but that's the example.
We're looking to implement this in all 3 buildings then?
It would, yes, yeah. This would be, you would do it all at once for the whole district.
You'd only have to have one system for all 3.
Correct.
It wouldn't be 3 purchases. It would be one purchase of the price we talked about.
Yep.
When Brian and I were sitting down and looking at the cost savings, because the energy savings were done in this building, we looked at the fact that there were so many things within the system that weren't hitting their mark, and we need something to really kind of dig into it and understand why that's really happening. And for some of it is there's like a damper in one of the univents is just locked on. Well, if the damper's locked on, it's going 24/7. And we don't have a really good way of seeing it. After the fact we do. And so this allows us to be more proactive and within 1 week say, hold on a second, this room has an issue. We need to get in there and fix that.
And for the purposes of the verifying energy savings, as an example, we monitor the run times of the fans. If that fan is running too long, we don't have a tool like the analytics in place to figure out why. What we would then do is connect to the control system and start looking and try to catch it to act inappropriately or unfairly, incorrectly when we happen to look at it. With the analytics, because it's trend data, it looks at data over time, I don't have to happen to be looking at it at the time it happens. I can use that tool to find the trend data. So we would get a lot more data to monitor the systems.
It seems like a lot of work to get this set up. Do you set up everything, or only the things that UNESCO has done for us, and then we have to set up the rest? Or does everything get set up?
Everything gets set up completely.
So all of our
Correct.
fire extinguishers, everything will all be added in as part of the
Yes.
implementation
Yeah.
cost?
You know,
Do you do that or Akita Box?
Akita Box would do that part of it with the maintenance management. On the setup of the analytics, that's something more we do. So that's more, we have a more controls experience. They would partner with us to have, we have a lot of information and spreadsheets from our audit. So that would help them to populate the information, but they would still come up here with the team. Probably 2-3 people, and they'll spend maybe a day, maybe 2 days walking through your whole facility. And that's all they'll do is just take pictures of all the equipment. They'll have little tags, they'll mark it on all the major equipment. All the examples of what I showed you today, like your fire alarm, your security systems. And over time, you can add more stuff to it. You can add each of your computers into that database as well to use it for IT if you like. You can put, we track groundskeeping as well. So outside the roofs, we'll put roof sections to identify the age of each roof and have that be a part of the tool. So it is fairly extensive, and we hope to spend all that effort up front so that it gets used.
And you said you do the roofs, or that's something?
Yeah, roofs would be included as well.
For gathering all that information, does all our equipment have the needed sensors to get it, or are we gonna have to add on sensors?
You would not have to add on sensors, so that's now to the analytics side. So maintenance management doesn't need sensors. You're just putting tags on equipment. For the analytics, we would monitor your existing infrastructure. So we would integrate to your control system and then just map.
We have enough, all our equipment has sensors.
They do. There is one thing that I would advocate for. It's a nice value add, which is over time to put in energy meters to integrate to those. So you have an electrical meter, a gas meter, but even an electrical sub meter. Now you can get time of day energy spikes, and you can tie that back to equipment operation. So that would be maybe the next phase. The way I see it is really trying to fine tune. Today I would not. It's a good value, but I'm not advocating for it today.
We're not at fine tuning yet.
Correct. Yeah.
Is that a normal pathway though, that after you have some numbers, then to say, here, let's trim this or shut
Yes.
this off?
Yeah, and the reason I say it that way, so we also are collecting your utility bills. So we're gonna have utility data, and we'll see a spike in your energy data. We'll look back at this analytics data and try to find out why. If you have energy meter data, that interval data by every time of day, we can now correlate equipment. Yeah, we see on that Saturday when we had that spike that our boilers started in, and all the pumps came on at the same time, and nobody was in the building. Why did they start up? So that's where we can start to use meter data to find out performance. But that again is not part of what we're planning to do.
These
Not with the energy meter.
implementations, have they ever led to anyone getting a rebate on a certain utility? I mean, where they're trimmed off enough that all of a sudden
That's a good question. I haven't inquired. Usually this would be implemented with our controls project, and they would have a rebate associated with them. I haven't done one just strictly as we are talking, just to include the analytics to monitor. But definitely, I'll look into that because it should qualify.
I mean, when you see an immediate kickback, that's a really much easier to sell.
I would say you're going to see, we will start to see improvement just with monitoring the operation, for sure.
Now, the Akita Box,
Yeah.
there was software before that was Sky Sparks. Is that not used anymore?
Yes, so the analytics platform we use is called Sky Spark. It's by a company called Sky Foundry, and they sell it to a lot of different companies. So we would be a vendor for them, for their product. Think of it more like Microsoft and Excel.
Or they're pretty proprietary.
Yeah, they're vendor neutral in terms of control companies, and there's also a number of distribution channels that you can buy that software. The difference is just the implementation of, we have a cloud server set up. It's actually software that you could even buy directly. So we could have the software installed right on your server in your building. The key difference is that's much more expensive. We have the infrastructure investment already in a large point license that we can then sell the service to more economically. So, and you don't have to maintain the server and that's my responsibility, and I'll be honest, that's quite a responsibility I've inherited that I'm having to work through, but it's a good system. So that
So-
SkySpark is the analytics.
So you, okay, and then Akita Box is the main,
Correct.
okay.
And our role is to tie the two together.
Okay.
And leverage that to provide the value back for the district.
Any other questions at this time? We'll have to look at whether we want to implement this.
Thank you for, that was
You're welcome.
wonderful to explain to us, because we had no idea.
Yeah, we were like, what?
What is this system?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad, and given the opportunity to describe it, I'm happy to come up. We do have the system implemented up at Hopkins Schools, Robbinsdale, and a couple other customers we're working with right now to implement more in a couple other districts in the metro area. So this is now becoming our standard on new projects to include both of these aspects. And unfortunately, two years ago,
Yeah,
when
they
we
said it wasn't even available when we did ours, so it wasn't.
correct it, but so it was more of a, hey, we're doing this too now. This is a really valuable service. So wanted to make sure we offer it to you.
And
Thank you.
long-term facility maintenance funds pay for it as well.
Which is good.
So is it on for voting tonight or no?
No.
Is it-
No,
okay.
no, not for
Next
tonight,
meeting,
just
Not for tonight, yeah.
Yeah. So anybody has any questions, we can get a hold of you or?
Yeah,
I'm sure
I'll-
Chris
And
has-
get a hold of me and then I'll contact Brian.
Okay, so if you guys have
Thank
follow-on
you.
questions,
Yeah,
let
thank you.
know, and
for
then
coming
next meeting we'll vote on whether we wanna approve it. Cause there is a cost, even though it's covered, and there's an annual
There's an
fee.
annual cost as well.
And I did ask the question on this annual fee, cause you had mentioned it a little bit about tablets or some type of phone device to go around.
Correct.
And when I talked to someone about that, I said, does this annual fee include getting replacements for that? Like every 3 years we would get a new tablet. And he did mention that that would maybe something we could throw in there.
Throw in as well, yeah.
Correct.
Now that my budget was just for the service.
Yeah.
So having a tablet, and you can have any tablet, you can have, just has to have a web browser. So the
Right.
platform is built on a browser. So it could be a Samsung tablet, it could be a Chromebook, it could be any tablet you want. But my only recommendation is if your maintenance staff is gonna carry them around, to have them in a product that can be,
That they can handle.
they can handle it, wouldn't get destroyed.
Right.
I'm a personal fan of the iPads because of the Siri to the voice recognition.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of typing out a long note on those of what I
They could
get,
just tell it to do.
they could just dictate and record it. So that's one of the features. Just I think would be of value. Any way you can overcome that hurdle. If there are specific tasks with a project like changing these filters, make sure you bring an 8-foot ladder. You put those in the work order. So having those two is a good way to capture that intellectual knowledge of your site.
Okay.
And he talked to Kevin about it.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
So,
Okay.
again, you say looking down the road, it would be something like the energy sub-meters. Looking down the road, how do we bring all of the employees in the buildings on board to use the ticket system? And, you said you could come in and do a training, but,
Yes.
so junk in, junk out, you gotta get the data, and then you got a machine that'll
That's right.
analyze it.
So the maintenance, the implementation for both of them would be within 90 days. And actually the analytics would go in faster. But 90 days for the implementation of the maintenance management system. And in that time, they'll also provide training for staff, your maintenance staff, but also for anybody entering service tickets. So that service portal would be a part of that implementation. So that all the staff can submit requests. They'll know at the end of the 90 days, here's a new system, we're going live on Monday. You have an issue, they can give you a QR code on their desk. You have a maintenance issue, just scan this QR code on your desk and then it'll bring up the page on your phone or on your device. A lot of different ways to bookmark that service portal. So that's part of the implementation.
So it would seem like the more data points, the more inputs we could have, the more quickly we could get a trend stacked on. So would that be, you and the principals would work on how to because telling staff they have one more thing to do is not the thing they want to hear.
The
But
idea
if
is
it's easy, if it's easy and sold as well as you sold this.
Well, thank you.
The staff
Well,
is-
Corinne explained it, that what this was, but I asked a question about behaviors of our employees to
Right.
help I have two sons who work in data science, so
Yeah.
I get this, but you gotta have the data.
Yes, and the data, I'm excited about the data for the analytics, because that's your control system data. There's data analytics with respect to this maintenance task and maintenance issues.
Right.
Where are the maintenance issues occurring? Is this rooftop unit constantly failing? You're always working on it. That's another analytic. So having, in addition to those analytics and that data, it also helps the behavior. It helps people to communicate better, because it's the service portal is, I type in my issue, they'll have a record of it. They come in and finish the work order, I get an email saying it's been completed.
Yeah, I like
That's
that.
a nice
So
communication.
the
tool.
teachers, I didn't mean to interrupt, the teachers, with the help tickets for IT through Dependable, if they think it's a ticket just like that, they will, they're very, very good with those right now, because they know that they get immediate turnaround with those tickets. So, cause I get a copy.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we were tasking just our buildings and grounds personnel with having to do all of this, it's good, but it would be better if you have everybody in every room in every
Right.
building.
Well, like you said, if a light goes out in this building and the person notices it and they put the information in right away, it's a benefit to that person because it's their room.
Exactly.
And then they
So-
know it's gonna be taken
Yeah.
care of because it's tracked, and then they know it's been taken care of because they get the emails. So I think it's a win.
In the past, traditionally, the implementation has been hardest because the maintenance staff doesn't want to have to do all that work to enter it in.
Right.
So it's that administrative cost of doing work. Well, it's just faster to just go replace the light bulb.
Mhm.
But it also, over time, also gives them credit for work they've done. So at the end of the year, say, I'm already busy. I don't have time to do more. Well, I always see you just walking around. Well, you have all this list of work orders you can point to and say, yeah, look how much we have. We have stuff we can't get to. So over time, that also helps them to defend their position and what they're doing, and that they're adding value and demonstrate that value.
I think that, it's important to let them know that's how you wanna look at it though, too. that it's,
That's right. It's not where
Gotta sell it to them.
they gotta sell it. It has to be sold.
I mean, it has to be a benefit for everybody.
Mhm.
Right? So it's gotta be- Thank you.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Laura.
you very much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Okay, moving right along, old business, items for discussion and approval, we have a resolution. Of the administration to make recommendations for reduction in programs and positions. We have, we're voting on that this evening, correct?
Just that we'll work on it, and the
Right.
discussion gave us some direction, so.
So I make a motion to introduce the resolution directing the administration to make recommendations for reductions in programs and positions as deemed necessary.
Thank you, Michael. So we have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Dean, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. K-12 contract, that's gonna be more of a discussion item.
We're not going to
We're
act on
not
that.
acting on it this evening, we had. You wanna talk about it now or wait till the committee updates?
I just as well talk about it
Yeah, might as well, since we
now.
have it here.
Yeah, we went over it in the online school committee, and I guess we ended up making it through everything, barely. And we talked about some of the things like free seats and the language around that at the schools, and how that was referenced in there, and how it kind of moved from one section to another. But there are very few changes overall in the 32 pages or whatever it is. There's very few sections that change. So K-12 is going to take the changes, which are in a separate document. They're going to put them in the main contract so that you can see the contract as a whole. But anywhere where there's a change, it will have the old language and the new language below it, so you can see them side by side.
The old language will have strike through, and we've asked for the new language to be highlighted in yellow, so it stands out.
And they didn't think it would take very long, and we're hoping that the full board can review and we can vote on it in the next board meeting.
Is this the existing contract?
This is parts of
No,
it.
this is
It's
just
what we did is we took the existing contract, Mike, and we added some of the changes that we recommended.
The changes are not reflected here yet.
No,
No,
not on the new
the
contract.
addendum,
The addendum is what you were looking at there, is the addendum that we.
the addendum
It's
are,
39 pages.
That's.
Oh, yeah,
the
that's.
addendum,
that's-
those are the
That's
changes.
the old contract.
And so
Okay.
you've got the old contract for what is,
Right.
you've got the
It
addendum
was
for
in two
what will
parts,
be.
so it was a little confusing, Mike, so what
Yeah,
we.
okay, I pulled it down.
He's gonna get a new one of that with the strikeout like we're used to looking at.
There's some minor, like, language things that we were, I mean, we had feedback from the attorney, and, we raised some questions. I mean, it's all pretty minor stuff, more language, I think, than anything else, so. But I think the main takeaway is we've all kind of went through it, the attorney went through it, we wanna get it to the board, so the board can, everybody can go through it, so we can approve it sooner than later, so that they can keep moving forward with the.
How long a contract?
10 years. Same
Another
as
10
the-
years.
Another 10 years from now, so it would go until 2029. And I sent it, when I got it from Thorpe, I sent it right to the lawyer that day, and I think that was January 7th. So, and I got the addendum back from the attorney late yesterday afternoon at 5 o'clock and forwarded it to people right away, but that really wasn't enough time.
So Scott assured us he would get it tweaked, so we can all take a look at it with the changes on everything on one, on the whole 32 page.
So is just that addendum, Ann, is just that addendum in the board packet, or are you?
I have the addendum in the board packet as well as, the actual contract is listed in that page. And then, I also have a letter that kind of describes what the lawyer saw too, so.
And the lawyer that looked at it is not the lawyer that looked at the original one, because Chuck Long is no longer with Kennedy Graven.
And
You have a
Mike, if
question?
it's not,
Yeah, I'll just,
if it's not in there, Michaeline, I'll make sure.
well,
Put it
I
in.
just might not be seeing it on my screen.
And that's why we wanted to redo it in the overall contract and highlight it, whatever, so you can have it clear what it was, what it's gonna be. So the contract, the one we have right now would have ended 2021.
Correct.
So instead, it's just gonna end 2029. So it's not adding to our existing, it's just, and that's for replacing it. Okay, any other questions on it right now?
Oh, and I stayed in the room, the reason I was a little late, I asked Scott about the, I hadn't seen that it had a potential termination for the exclusivity in 2024. And I asked why that wasn't 2027, because it should have been within 2 years of the end of the contract, because that's the way this one was set up. And so he said he would ask about changing that to 2027.
Yeah, that's one of the sections, when you're going through, read it, and it's a little confusing, we're trying to clear up some of that stuff, but yeah, there is exclusivity in there, but there's different reasons that could end,
Right.
so.
Which we talked about when he was here discussing it, kind of like if we're not supporting it, then they may come back to us to say, hey, you guys aren't supporting this in any way, shape, or form. We would like to offer it up to other schools, type of thing.
And
Which I don't see that happening, but.
that's a new section, I
Yeah.
don't think it replaced anything.
Right. That's about Destination Career Academy.
Right, so take a look at it. If you have questions, get a hold of Corinne. I mean, Mimi has a pretty good understanding of it, so.
And the other thing, the head of school has never been a K-12 position here. And so that, the original contract that was approved,
I would
the
say
head of school
just-
is a K-12 position. And so they just are moving that to the head of school is a district position, not a K-12 position.
I would say wait when they send out the new one that they're doing the addendum and adjustments to it, be an easier read to understand what we talked about, as opposed to trying to go through what we have right now. That's what my recommendation would be. So.
And with the head of school, we had a lengthy conversation about it, so if, let's just say enrollment doubled and we decided that we needed a new principal or a new head of school, the contract would allow for that. It would be paid the same way as all of our principals are today. It would not be paid directly by K-12.
Any other questions? Maybe you have anything else, Ron?
No.
Jean, did you have any?
No.
Okay. Okay, MSHSL grant approval.
Move to support the resolution for me for the application in Minnesota State High School. You want me to read it?
No.
Okay.
That's fine. That was
Second
good.
it.
We have a second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Acceptance of the abatement bid.
These were, we couldn't get a facility meeting, so this got emailed out to all facility members, and I said that it doesn't make sense to go with anyone but Mavo. Mavo was one of the people that came highly recommended the last time that we had some abatement done here. It's funny because EnviroBate was the one we went with before because they had the lowest bid, and now they came in at the highest bid. And Mavo came in right about at where we budgeted. So
So do we have a motion to approve?
Can I ask, well,
I'll move to approve the bid presented by Mavo.
Second.
Discussion.
I was having a hard, I don't think the link was into this document when I looked at it this afternoon, and but there is a document out there that lists like all the renovations to the science rooms.
oh, that's for that's under
Units.
new business,
New business.
and that's not approving, that's not new business A.
So,
So-
but this is
This is just abatement, not
of
any.
the science rooms,
Of everything.
Of
that we
everything.
talked about.
Yes.
including the science rooms.
Right.
Including the science room and some of the floor spaces that we had.
It's
Remember
just-
in that map?
Taking out asbestos flooring, it's not putting anything in.
Right.
No, it's,
This is
well,
just-
it's
And
taking out,
countertops.
it's taking out the asbestos flooring, it's grinding the mastic, because the mastic tested positive for asbestos. And also there, as the contractors were walking through, they realized that in the science rooms, the way the science rooms and the flooring is done, there was no way they could get rid of the mastic without basically damaging all of the casement that's in there. So all of the base cabinets are going to have to be taken out during the abatement process so they can actually grind the mastic. And we have to get rid of the mastic because it tested positive for asbestos. And so that cost includes removal of all of the base cabinets in the science rooms as well.
To get it all cleaned up.
And the counters had asbestos in them
The
too.
counters did not have asbestos, but this includes, the countertops were actually a plywood covered with an acid resistant coating that is no longer acid resistant. They're 50 years old,
Yeah.
almost.
Is there any special funding that's allowable for?
We have, in our 10-year plan, we did have this project in as far as the abatement. We were hoping we could abate without destroying what was there, but there, as they walked through and I was asking about that, I said, do you have to, because I know having the abatement crew do the demo is much more expensive. I said, is there any way we can demo this ourselves? And they looked at it and said, no, because you're gonna be ripping into asbestos tiles. So it's,
I think the question was is there any funding, correct?
oh, it's long-term,
Is
it's
there
in the
anything
long-term facility.
available beyond the school that, you know,
I
can
did.
help pay for this.
I did write a grant, or tried to write a grant for Bremer, and Bremer said that schools and this type of project at schools is considered something that should be done with their own budget. So it's not anything that they fund as far as their grants. I haven't found anything else. There are no real super funds for schools to deal with asbestos and abatement. That's why we've got long-term facility maintenance, and that's why it was in the 10-year plan, because we knew that IEA said that the tiles in this floor are getting to the point where they're degraded enough that when you wipe on them, you get the white powder. And so they said they couldn't, we couldn't in good conscience have the custodial staff refinish them again, because in refinishing them, they're
Or it puts spores in the air.
We only pay, so long-term facility
I say
maintenance
maybe you
is
should explain
88%
because
from the
no-
state, so we pay 12%. Is that the right?
Yep, that is.
So it's
Okay.
a pretty good deal if we can get it out of that, because then we're only paying 12%.
And with, that's why in the design, when we're looking at redoing the science rooms, the biology room is done with exactly the same floor plan and exactly the same sink configuration. Because if you replace like for like, long-term facility maintenance could cover it. And the other science room with the islands coming out into the floor, it's not a very 21st century type of arrangement. And so we are redoing that one with the horseshoe like the other room, because that's kind of design that
Well, you've
most
gotta remove them anyway.
Right, but it makes a huge difference to us financially, which we'll talk about. in a little bit.
I did talk to Kevin Cardill today, because at La Crescent, they're looking at redoing their science rooms as well for the same reason. And he said, what are your science rooms coming in? And that's kind of the cost sheet you were looking at. And he wasn't even looking at just abatement, he was looking at the replacement, and whatever firm they're looking at gave him a price twice what ours is. So,
Okay, so,
Speaks the
Any more?
truth, he does.
so we had a motion with a second. A little more discussion. Anybody else have anything else they want to add to that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Policies for second reading.
Move that we accept policies 410, 413, 414, 415, and 726.
Got a motion, Gene, second by Ron. Discussion. Michaeline, you have anything you want to add
No,
to
Ron,
that?
or Jean's the one who
Jane,
found the
she- she-
corrections,
She changed it.
No.
It's changed.
So you
Yeah.
good to go then?
so we're good to go.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, new business, items for discussion and approval. Resolution for naming the superintendent. To enter into a contract for UNESCO for summer work.
and this is just, estimates. Notice there's the classroom cost, and that's just the replacement 27. That's the biology room, 29. The reason that 29 is slightly higher than 27, 29 will have the fume hood, and 29 has the gas to it. We decided that it was probably safer to just have the gas for the Bunsen burners in one room and not both. And since they are set up the exact same way, they would be the rooms would be easily shared.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
classroom 29? So if we just look at this, so Pete, if we look at the first long-term facility maintenance, 164 and 87, that second classroom is 104,000. We have to pay the total, so we're not just paying 12% of that. We have to pay the whole 104,000 because we're redesigning it.
Right.
But I guess my question is that redesign worth $100,000? Because that is a lot of money
Right.
versus 12,000.
And the question, we talked about it as far as if there's monies out there that we can get for that, to cover that $104,000.
And I'm looking for other
So we're looking
funds.
for there funds that we may be able to get grants, you know, that we may be able to get for certain things? Because some of that cost, I believe, is furniture, I think was part of it, or
Furniture, that's the,
there was just some other
the
things.
5,748 of the other. That's kind of the furniture cost.
But you're
And
right, maybe
the
we gotta
tables-
find out, is it worth $104,000 to do this renovation, part of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, can they learn effectively in the classroom if we keep them? I don't know that I've ever been in the classroom, but whatever we have to do to use long-term facility maintenance funding, if we have to put the things in back exactly where they were, is it really going to affect the learning? I mean, it's a lot of money, and I mean, it's gonna have to go to finance committee. I don't know.
I feel like part of the conversation was to try and make a more a room that's more configurable for different learning, and considerations. For example, robotics could not use the room very well with everything stuck in the room, but if it's an open room, it could be used.
Correct.
I
And
was under
with
the assumption that isn't there sinks and all sorts of stuff.
No,
I mean,
it's-
They're on the edge now.
They're on the
so
edge.
it's all removed.
The
So
whole purpose of this
It's
is
just
to
the
open it up
benches
the
and
middle of
the
it and utilize it, not
Have
just,
more room,
you could put
have more
tables,
floor space.
you know,
I
more
think
floor
it's
space.
really
It seems
not.
high.
It's stupid for them to say you have to put everything back in the exact same spot or
That's
not.
long-term
Because
We're not the
facilities
ones that-
maintenance.
we're not adding any new features. We're just saying we want to move it over here
Yeah.
from here, and it's the same thing going back in.
But that goes
Yeah.
back to why we
I
only
mean-
pay 12%. They're giving you the money because they're but
What
they're
if-
limiting it for you.
no, it's.
What if what we put in is on rollers, and we can roll it? I mean, let's try to think creative so that
If
we
we
can
put,
use
if we
long-term
put
facility.
anything in on rollers that would not be doing like for like, we
No,
couldn't
then-
use any long-term facility
Right.
maintenance money then.
We talked about that. We can.
I've already called Sarah
What you may
Miller.
want to do is look at because right now this is a resolution just to give Ken the opportunity to start working on getting bids and getting the project going. Doesn't mean that that's what we're going to do.
Right.
Yeah, but I kind of
But I
hate to get
think-
a whole lot of bids if it's
Right,
not.
but
what
I
we
think
intend
if for
to do.
comfort for yourself and if other people have questions, go down and take a look at it to know what the changes are gonna be. So you know at that time, is it gonna be worth $104,000?
Or my next question is there a way that whatever features, like the hooding or whatever, is there a way that the two classroom, we could just have it in one classroom
That's
and
why.
not in both?
That's why 29 is more expensive than 27. We're only putting the fume hood in one room. We're only putting gas in 29, not in 27. Right now, both rooms have gas. Neither room's using them because there's not the safety shutoffs.
And that's covered by long-term facility maintenance.
Yep.
We're trying to put as much as possible in the one room that will be covered by long-term facility maintenance.
Yeah.
The second room, we're not putting as much in to keep the cost down. But again, if there's a question, I'm comfortable,
And it's
we want to look at where we can get the money.
Well, I mean,
So
I
we're not-
could say we need a new auditorium, and we need this, and we need
Mhm.
that, and we haven't done the strategic planning, we haven't prioritized it. I'm not saying science isn't important, but I'm saying $250,000 on 2 science rooms is a lot of money, and
Yep.
When was the
it's
last time anything was spent on those roads?
Yeah, 50 years.
1970.
still, I mean, it's a lot of money, and I want to be fiscally responsible and get long-term facility maintenance funding for whatever we can. And so if it means putting it back the old way and it still works and it's still a huge improvement, and it meant that it saved us 88%.
Can't you get the bids, and then also, as you're getting the bids, then you're still applying for grants or whatever.
I'm gonna be looking for money for this,
So,
yeah.
Right,
Right.
so then it's kind of an ongoing process anyway, you
Mhm.
know,
And
and revisit
it's
it
just-
again then.
I would like to know that because even the long-term facility maintenance money is still money we're spending. I'd like to know that if we're going to do a project here, that we're going to do it in a way that 50 years from now, somebody else was not grumbling about what we did. I'd like it to be something that is going to last, that is going to serve not only our purposes now, but is going to be serving those students in the future as well. And that's when we're looking at the way we were reconfiguring that room. The reason it needed to be reconfigured is because right now it serves, and it doesn't even serve for all the physics experiments that need to be done.
But
And
we don't even have a physics class right now. I mean, there were only 2 kids that signed up for it, so we didn't offer the class. So I guess that's what I'm saying, is if we're creating a room for these physics kids that don't exist, is that the best use of our money? And I know that, again, I am a fan of science, but I'm just trying to take a step back and say, is this the best use of money? Yes, we had to take out asbestos counters, but now we have to spend $250,000 on new science rooms. Or maybe we just do the one because it's covered by long-term facility maintenance and we have to wait for the other.
Except to
We have to do the abatement.
to do the abatement, all of the cabinets are destroyed. And so when the cabinets are destroyed, it's all the plumbing that's in them as well. That all just gets demolished, so we have to put something back in.
I certainly want to see the bids for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
We're not gonna do it by
Well, that's
not
again, it's
having bids.
the whole purpose of what we're doing tonight is just to get the ball rolling. It's not locked in stone at this moment in time. It's just so we can go out
It's so that we
and
can get the
bids,
contract with
look for
UNESCO.
grants, see where there's other monies that we can come up with. And at the end of the day, like you said, maybe if we have a finance committee meeting and we say, hey, we just can't afford it, then we need to come up, the facility, we need to sit down and come up with a plan. How are we gonna do it the way we wanna do it and keep it under budget?
Go to IKEA.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that would be a lot cheaper.
But
Can
as
we have
of
the tech
tonight,
class build them? Is that allowed? I mean, it just seems like these are ridiculous numbers, honestly. But
And that's why I did wanna, it was interesting to talk to Kevin because he said he was told that you couldn't redo a science room for less than $320,000.
and
And
as we learned just a minute ago, other schools are spending twice what we are on similar projects.
right,
So I think we need to look at this as a school. You say we don't have a physics, we don't have that class right now that we're not offering, but who knows, 5 years from now, we may have 20 kids that wanna take that class and we don't have a facility for it. Or, it could happen next year, we don't know what's gonna happen. Our whole purpose being here is to look down the road to the future. What's gonna be best for our kids, not only today, but tomorrow. So, I think tonight, we're just discussing the resolution. Let's get going on the bids. Let's look out and see if there's grants out there. You mentioned Brimmer. There's other people out there that have money that we could get from them. There may be a science group in Minnesota that may say, yeah, we'll give you the money for that if that's what you're doing. Who knows? That's not.
when are we gonna approve what's done? Like what work we're gonna do? Because I feel like oftentimes we just do this and then the ball gets rolling, and then if I ask a question later, oh, we already talked about that and this is what we're doing.
No, that's why this just says resolution.
Yeah, but I wanna know, when are we gonna talk?
Once we get the bids.
Well, when we see the bids.
Once we get the
you gotta
bids,
see the bids before you.
that's when it'll.
Can we
make
get
a decision.
2 optional bids, one to leave it the way it is? Can we at least think about, can we look at both? Because if the ball gets rolling, it's really hard to stop everything and then go back.
And we look at other options. Like I said, if it's a money against issue, when we talk to the finance committee, that's, where the money comes from.
Well, I know there's not,
So-
our income is less this year than
Right,
it was last year.
Exactly.
We have to cut costs, so I know we don't have the money. So, I'm assuming that, Gwen, maybe I shouldn't speak for Gwen, but it just doesn't make sense that we have the money because we have less income. So we're taking it out of our savings to pay for this.
And that's like you said, we have to determine, is it worth that to us as a school? So we can also exhaust our, looking for monies. If we get monies and if we can't get money, then we have to say, okay, is it worth the money?
And the strategic planning meeting is when?
February 7th.
Okay, because I'll feel better about it if we come out of that meeting and we all say we want to put all of our money into science and these align, but right now I feel like we're doing it just because we had to take it out because of the abatement, and I don't think that's the right reason to spend that amount of money. So, and I'm a little worried that the ball's gonna get rolling here and, you know, there's no, I don't know when it actually gets approved, what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
I don't know what part of the process, once we get the bids, but if the bids were only asked to be bid a certain way, we have no other alternative.
So what we're asking on this is not for you to sign contracts, but just to go out and get bids.
Right,
Right.
right.
Yeah,
I mean, it sort of looks like on there it says sign. Or
Well, does UNESCO go out for the bids, or do you?
UNESCO
Yeah,
does the bids
UNESCO.
for us and opens them with me, and then I bring them back to the board. This is, so I can sign, so UNESCO can go out and do the
request.
bid. And what we're doing is looking for some vendors where we don't actually need to do the bids because they've already gone through the bid process with different entities in the state. There's the cabinetry through University of Minnesota. They've already done that bid project through, and it's Hummus and Haldeman and Hummus. I can't remember which way the words go. But anyway, they already have the low bid for the science cabinet.
So that dollar amount is already built into this.
Actually, it saves us money because we're utilizing the same vendor, because they don't have to go out.
But it's unknown to
right.
somebody who didn't
Right.
talk to UNESCO which of those things are predetermined and which things
Oh, yeah, you're right.
you're
Yeah.
gonna be getting the bids. So is the casework, that's the stuff that's being bid?
The casework is the stuff with Hummus and Haldeman.
Oh, okay, so,
And it's flooring. They're actually at MSBA. I talked to the man from Hiller, and so Kevin McGauley reached out to the man from Hiller and has in writing that $4 per square foot installed is the maximum price. And so for the flooring, to redo flooring, which is Kevin was shocked. He said that's a really good deal. So we're gonna try to do, and we don't have to go for bids on flooring because the Hiller man has already done the service co-op purchasing agreement. And so since they've already gone through that purchasing agreement, they've already gone through the bid process.
so what do we have to go out for bids on?
Some of the fixtures, as far as the sink fixtures, as far as some of the gas fixtures. We've got some of the big things where
It's just hard to tell from looking at the line item list, what things are already sort of determined because they already have a contract with somebody who's gone through the bid process and which things are outside of that.
except with each of those, final say on each line item is still, I mean, it's still your call.
Okay.
So, do we have a motion for the resolution? Anybody?
Motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Ron. Like a second? Second. Pete, discussion? Any further discussion on this?
I just want, if we're gonna do bids, I would just like to keep in mind that we might not be able to afford that amount, and maybe we should get bids for a more creative solution, like what is there as well, just as a backup, so we know.
So when is facilities gonna meet to discuss this? Because maybe facilities could kick around.
I know we talked about trying to set up a meeting. We were gonna try to have one this week, but obviously this week I went Kittywampus, so.
We can try for the 31st.
And how long, I mean, once you go into setting these bids, when would they come back? Like,
We're hoping, beginning of March.
so that we will have a chance to have the strategic planning
Yep.
conversation before
Oh, yeah.
looking at bids.
So you look at maybe set up a facility meeting for 31st of January.
Okay.
Josh?
Yeah.
Like you're on that, Pete, now? So check your calendars. Okay, so further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Batting cage donation.
Okay, we got a letter from Rushford State Bank, and they're offering us this $5,000 to put up a portable batting cage in the gym.
Will that cover the total cost of it?
We looked at this years ago, and your problem in the gym is the way the gym is aligned. You don't want to have the batting cage, if you visualize the gym when we're sitting here now, you don't want it across like this, which the beams are set up for, that's the natural way. It needs to go over on the side where we've had the batting cage in the past, therefore it'd have to be retrofitted, which is a little more cost involved in order to do that. You'd have to get a bid from somebody that is going to put that in. They need it badly, I can assure you that, because the one that's there is old.
And this it's only used by softball, not by baseball?
Baseball too. You should make it in a manner so it can be utilized by both. Yeah, there's no reason you couldn't. Yeah.
So we so I wonder what the whole cost is. Do you have any idea what that retrofitting cost is gonna be?
I got this letter and was asked to put it on the board, and I apologize. I don't really know.
What does it indicate? I mean, are they giving the money no matter what? So it can sit there in a...
No, it's probably designated specifically for.
Right, but can it sit there and wait till other monies are available if it's higher than $5,000?
I think we have a policy on that.
I'm sure we have a policy on it.
I mean, donations
otherwise
can
it's
be
got-
given and it can be recommended that they're for something, but I don't think
No,
they can't
it never used to be able to be just like
earmarked like that.
No.
I mean, so that might be a condition on which they will donate it, but we'd have to be ready to move forward on the whole thing.
And it says it goes to the girls softball team. Does it go in their fund?
Baseball too.
Well, does it go into? I mean,
No, it would go towards the purchase of a.
and they wouldn't be the one purchasing it out of their athletic fund.
No, it'd be facilities, it would be
Yeah.
us purchasing it, right?
Can we get a bid on the cost?
So if you want to just,
Batco's has a company that.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
brand.
Can we,
Here, I'll
Well,
just-
So
there's-
can we just
there's-
and
buy
so
it?
that's why this must have been solicited, but I'm not sure. And Todd went to, the girls have been, okay, the girls have been fundraising.
So there's other money available beyond this?
We need more information.
Had they eyed up this
I'd
back
say, okay, we got a motion.
I don't know
Wait.
anything about.
I don't think
Yeah,
that's what
they
we
need
do.
a
that.
motion,
I just
just
know
we're
they're
gonna table.
selling stuff for Vantage. That's all I know.
Right?
I mean, it's
We do
pretty
need a motion to
specific.
table.
Well, I
I
think,
don't think we do, I think we can just.
over and above, we need to know what it costs.
I think we need to table this.
Get some
Thank you
prices,
for the
get some
generosity.
Yes,
information
that's
on
wonderful.
the stamp.
Until
somebody's got a
we,
used one for sale.
right, I think we need to
No,
Find
very
more out.
Cost you.
Chris, I
That's
would
right,
get
you
with
gotta run it.
Todd,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
gonna
and
cost
have
something.
him
Well,
find
no,
out.
Todd gave the letter to me.
No, but
and-
Todd
and
needs to
didn't
go back
really-
and look at
yeah.
But I
this.
would think it could sit until the rest of the funds were there. I
Well,
wouldn't think-
just some background on this. For
if
a
we
number
need
of
that
years,
science room.
but for a number of years, we researched into this. And so this isn't like a new thing. Todd is actually, back in the years when I was coaching, he had me go up Caledonia and look at what they had because he wanted that here. And yeah, but then that's when I told him it had to be retrofitted here because you have to turn it around. And so, and there's very likely I could find somebody else that'll donate to pay for the whole thing, But you need to know what it costs first before you can do any of these things, so.
Well, the
I think-
Batco one out here, it says Batco indoor and outdoor portable batting cage is $4,999. With free shipping. With free shipping.
Yeah, they got it.
And that's one sort of
How
like they got for
convenient.
outdoor.
Right, right, you just gotta make this so you can raise it and lower it, and, that's a
That may
little
just be-
complicated issue here compared to other schools.
That may
But I
just
could
be
even
the
find out
case.
those things. I can get those costs.
But their thought and generosity is much appreciated.
Yes,
Right,
absolutely.
right.
And whoever solicited it and
Yeah.
asked for it has been doing it for work. Maybe Lisa Shuddy would have some information on this as
Yeah,
well.
can't we table it
Yeah,
until
we,
Yeah, we
next
will.
meeting?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, and then,
We'll just table it till next meeting, then
Right.
bring it up once we get more information on total cost.
One question on batting cages stuff. Are they putting a batting cage for the baseball?
it's the same thing.
This
It would
same
be for
thing, we can
softball
use it
and
for either
baseball.
or.
Or they, I mean, this
Multi-purpose.
past fall, they dug some holes and put some concrete up
Oh, you're talking about outside?
Oh.
outside, up the outside pathway.
Yes, Jason was installing that.
Is that an outdoor batting cage or what he's putting up?
Mhm.
Okay.
Is it installed here?
Have we paid for that one or?
That was all donations.
Okay. But did we accept the
Donations
donation
over,
money?
donations over several years for that.
That was like funded through the athletic boosters and things, so
Yes.
it didn't come to the
Right.
board.
Right. Cause I seen people working out there.
Yeah.
On that all fall.
Okay, we're gonna table that one until next time. And then Pete, you're gonna give a Todd on it.
Yeah, we'll get
Yes,
that.
should need to be done. I
Hopefully
don't
we can
remember.
do it next meeting.
Okay, moving right
It's on
along.
the ground already.
Announcements, sporting events, breakfast. They're going up February 2nd.
I've got a van reserved and we will leave from the parking lot, the faculty parking lot at 6:15. And at 6:30, we will stop in Wilson and pick up Eric Bartleson. And then we have,
Ron, Michaeline, and Jean.
yes, the
And
three,
Jean.
yep,
Who's driving this party bus?
I am. And so it'll be the four of us and then we'll pick up Eric.
And it's at Mayo High School.
It's at Mayo High School.
I think the last time you were at our-
Anything else on that, Corinne? Any other questions on it?
There's the, I think, all of you should have seen the agenda for it, so if there's
Oh, yeah,
anything that you
yeah.
want us to ask about.
Ron's got my list. Meeting and committee updates. We already talked about online. Did you want to add anything else on that? Mimi?
No,
Okay, so policy committee, you guys had a meeting. Anything you want to address on that?
Well, the discussion was on, trying to have a uniform set of procedures attached to our transportation policy, transportation of non-resident students.
So open enrolled students.
The open enrolled students. So Corinne and Rick and Todd are going to look at where those families are, what communities they're in. Come back to us, set some guidelines and come back to us with a couple of possible proposals. Because right now, well, Corinne can speak to this better than I can, but we're sending buses kind of willy-nilly here, there, and everywhere. And we're trying to just give the principals and transportation people something a little bit more consistent, so that,
And the open enrolled families, when they're saying, hold on a second, you send a bus into Rushford, why can't you send a bus into La Crescent to pick up one student? And so then we have to figure out how far out of, how far beyond our district lines are we going to go, or is it that the way we're going to do it, go so many miles beyond district lines? Are we going to go so many miles beyond existing bus routes? Are we Are we going to
Todd
base it?
are gonna sit down,
Yeah.
come up with a.
Well, they were gonna, because they know where the students are, and having those open enrolled students is a benefit to us. And so it's worth, you know, providing some transportation. But so it's both looking at, you know, where are the students coming from, what's the revenue and what's the cost. So we're looking at that. Right, Ron?
Yes. So more to come on it.
Yeah.
Anything
There
else?
really aren't any easy answers on that
When
one.
are we, did we have a meeting scheduled? Like, I don't know when it is.
It was going to be the end of February.
Okay.
Anything else on that policy? What do you have? I don't see it in here.
No, I don't. I wasn't out. We meet once a month.
Oh. You should make sure that Ann's got that schedule so she can.
I wasn't out yet. We meet once a month.
Hiawatha, you know what his meetings are?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Every fourth Wednesday.
Make sure that they're on for updates. Thanks, Ann.
So we met and we had a person from Carl Sanderson there, Gary Benson. He's one, and he's interviewed most. He still has us left to interview, I think 6 more schools. Plans on getting this next 2 weeks, because wants to get them in before first part of February for sure. And he's on time with the schedule. He's coming through.
And the interviews for.
And what Hiawatha Valley needs. He's coming up, needs assessment, what we need, what buildings or anything else. If it comes to building, levy, that comes down to levy and everything else. But, he's just gathering information at this time. We might sit where we are yet, never know. Chris Melvick mentioned that he resigned. He's going to be gone in March. They did put out applications, human resource, and they got a couple in, but they really didn't fit on that, so they're contracting for the service now.
What's that position?
The financial, I think.
I was on the interview. There was one to whom we were going to extend a contract.
Yeah.
Did he not take
He
it?
must have not had.
But this is for the finance, HVAC finance.
Yeah, so they're
Business manager.
So now they're contracting it out to financial service. So in fact, where Chris is going, they use that one, and they've been helping us quite a bit at first. And the last one is Chuck Norton, who runs the Wind Spectrum program in Caledonia, is turned in his resignation. So they're looking, so they need pairs and some lead people too as well. So
How come? Yeah, what's
They
going on?
haven't, Chuck was number 3 for this, I mean, because there was one that resigned right before August. They hired somebody. I don't think that one ever came on the job, and then they hired Chuck.
and Chuck resigned because he says I'm not the field that I want to be working in at this time with those kids. He says it's not what I want to do.
Didn't you get interviewed, class?
Okay.
What were you doing?
Kind of, he thought.
What's wrong with that picture?
Yeah. But we did have one person that retired now with the district for 30 years, the OT person. And she said
Joni finally retired?
Yeah, but she said she would, Bronk, but she said she would still sub if they needed a sub. So, I mean, she was with them for 30 years.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. So, do we have anything else, Brenda, you would like to add?
Just a future agenda item, you might see something coming up about water bill and the cost of water. Those of you that live in town got the city newsletter about the utility bill increase. That will, a couple of years ago, our water bill doubled because of the way they were assessing our water usage and billing for it. it'll go up again by half again as much with these new rates. I talked to Chris on the phone, and I did say this hurts, because it's a lot more for water. So that's another reason why we really need to make sure that all of our systems are as efficient and effective as possible.
So Glenn, you know about that, correct? The water bill gonna go up
Yeah.
by another half of what it is today for budgeting purposes. You're just telling us. So,
So you want me to do that in the budget, is that what you're saying?
well, I just wanna make sure we have, you know, we keep spending money we don't have, so.
Yeah, Glenn.
And even since you're the one that writes the checks. Yeah, might have put limiters on the bubblers there.
But UNESCO is charting our water usage and both the costs and the total gallons used in building by building, so.
I put it in when the toilet's got the double buttons.
Yeah, so just the use.
You remember what we talked about 15 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Waterless urinals.
And everybody laughed at us. I remember that, we brought that up 15 years ago, we should go to waterless urinals. Everybody's like, what, are you crazy? But hey, go down the highway, I think Wisconsin has put them in their rest areas to conserve water. So you're on, we were ahead of the game. And you're up to
Alright.
standard, see, Europeans are ahead of us. On that note, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Discussion?
When are we gonna share what we did at the next meeting or at some time?
Yeah, I figured we'd do it at
Thank
the
you.
next
I don't
meeting.
wanna, I just wanted to.
I figured we'd do it at the next meeting, one of us, and
Yes.
I'd like to do.
Yes, the board.
Did we have unanimous approval of
All
that
in favor?
motion?